So, the gift of personal revelation. All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Alan, for teaching my class while I was away. I'm sure you had fun. I got to see the first image. As we logged on to Zoom together, we were in a taco place somewhere in North Carolina. But thank you for that so much. I'm sure you had fun. And it's good to see everyone. Good to be back. So the gift of personal revelation, Interesting that actually this photo has a lot of dark stuff on the horizon. It's sort of appropriate because it just might be in times when the horizon seems a little dark and uncertain that we need most to know that we have this gift. And the gift of the revelation is always showing us what we need to know in any moment to get through and to do so with grace. So our October theme continues to be building bridges. And today's talk, of course, is the gift of personal revelation. And there are a few inspirations for today's message. One of them is the birth of the Bab, herald of the Baha'i faith, which would be celebrated today. And the other one is the birth of Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith, which would be celebrated tomorrow. Also, I have this as inspiration. This is the 2014 book from Neil Donald Walsh called God's Message to the World, You've Got Me All Wrong. I took that on my trip. I guess we call it glamping when you go somewhere that's kind of like camping, but it's super glamorous. That's what we did. So this book as well. And then also Ernest Holmes' Can We Talk to God? Just in case you're looking at what you're going to read this winter, I'm giving you a couple ideas. In addition to that, I had the pleasure of meeting Greenville's own Joanne Borovica. She is a member of the Baha'i Center here, a freelance writer, and was very active with the Interfaith Forum Greenville for many years. And this is her book, which is called Light of the Kingdom, Biblical Topics in the Baha'i Writings. Really fantastic. I dip into this a little bit at a time because there's so much incredible information in here. And then I have my favorite, which is, I'll show it to you. It is The Complete Idiot's Guide to the World Religions. So all of these authors in these books have helped me a little bit this morning. And what we're going to talk about in the spirit of building bridges and the gift of personal revelation is moving from the shore of one set of ideas to the shore of another, and also to look at what that bridge might be comprised of, and to look at the distance between those two shores. Because the wonderful news about those ideas in this case is that it's not a really far span. It is not a great expanse between the Baha'i faith and science of mind and new thought. It is not a great distance between the ideas that comprise that belief system and the one that we occupy. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the Baha'i faith. And I'm going to just read a paragraph. It's actually just 2 sentences from the very first page of the book by Joanne Borovica, okay? And it says, in the Baha'i faith, the world's religions are embraced as serialized chapters in the never-ending book of God. In this divine book, the release of each new sacred chapter complements and illuminates previous chapters. The Baha'i writings represent revelatory interpretation. That is, they give contemporary significance to ancient scripture by revealing inner meanings of the text for this age. That sounds awfully familiar to me. The Baha'i faith comes out of someone who was originally a member of the Shiite Muslim Messianic sect called Babism, and came to be known as Baha'u'llah. And he received a vision of God's plan for humanity while imprisoned in 1852 Persia, which is now called Iran. He is the most recent in a long line of divine messengers, including Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, and they are all seen as motivating forces in the development of civilization. So that's a little bit about the history. A little bit more about them, if I can find my notes here, is that they are progressive faith, which sees the book of God, as I read, ever being added to with new revelations. They also teach the harmony of science and religion, that if something is claimed by a religion that can't be proven with science, it doesn't align with the truth of how life operates, then it must need a little bit of adjustment, because they believe that they should complement and never contradict one another. They also believe in the equality of men and women. They believe in an openness to the evolution of human understanding, valuing interfaith dialogue and learning, and more. And in my personal experience of people in this faith is that they're very active about that, wanting to get together for interfaith dialogues, deliberate conversations, to share food and conversation, to find out what you believe and how you practice it. So there is a very active openness to other faiths, and this idea that there's always something more that is being revealed that adds to this book of God. So I love that, and they're very open to this again, the science and the science confirming the things that we claim to believe in. So we have that, and we call that the shore, from which we build a bridge over to New Thought. And on the other shore, New Thought, Science of Mind, and also the book that I held up from Neale Donald Walsch called God's Message to the World, You've Got Me All Wrong, and a couple of ideas here. One of them being that this assertion that we all actually talk to and hear from God, or the absolute, the infinite, the universe, universal intelligence, whatever you choose to call that, we are actually in constant communication with that. And so our bridge is going to go in the direction of that personal experience, We also have the science of mind and spirit referred to as a philosophy, a religion, or a way of life. Not and. Some of us call it a philosophy. Some of us call it a religion. Some of us call it a way of life. And many of us use that in conjunction with our other belief systems, which, if they are in alignment with universal truth, would naturally complement each other. So we got lots of room there. It is also progressive and progressed into a focus on personal experience of revelation and a practical application of the principles that we study in daily life. So it's part of that progression that takes us further into not only what more is available to know, but something else very important is that who else is capable of knowing that? So the bridge itself is perfectly designed and engineered and constructed to facilitate connection and movement between these bodies of ideas. And it feels to me like just a wonderful interfaith bridge. I love it. Very easy to walk on. It doesn't have to go too far. And it's really a timely consideration building this bridge right now. So the expanse is not wide. The area that we need to traverse is not very great in terms of beliefs. Now, here's where on the other side, we begin to differentiate a little bit. If you'll say on the other shore. And on the other shore, where the differentiation comes from, I think, has to do with the source of this information. If we go back to one line in the book describing the Baha'i faith. It is said that these messengers, they're called manifestations of God. And so some of them that were listed were Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Baha'u'llah, and also there's so many more men and women. So the list is not complete, okay? And that's another thing that Neale Donald Walsch points out in his book, is that the list is bigger and it includes men and women. And the thrust of his book is that it also includes us, you and me, okay? And that's where we're going with our bridge. So on the other side, instead of this idea which is held in the Baha'i is the last in a lineage of prophetic teachings that have been delivered and popularized as the next iteration. We're talking about what comes after that. Up until that point, there is this idea that this information about how to live, how to be, how to build civilizations, how to get along comes from, quote, special beings who occupy a spiritual station higher than humanity. Special beings who occupy a spiritual station higher than humanity. And think about that for a moment. Is that true? It's true if we believe it is. And what we understand, what we've come to know and to mess around with, is this idea that it is done unto us as we believe, for one thing. And if we're willing to release this idea that we don't know, we will begin to know. If we're willing to release this idea that we're not special enough to know, we realize that we are special and we do know. And I'm not certainly talking about just plopping down and saying, okay, God, bring it on, tell me what you got, because there is this built-in necessity for cooperation in order to commune with the Spirit. There was a line that Rick read in the Ernest Holmes reading during this part of the celebration. He said that we make ourselves available to this communication through uplifted thought and silent contemplation. So there are a couple of things here that have to do with how we teach communicating with God. I want to read a couple from the book, Can We Talk to God by Ernest Holmes. And I got this back in the late 80s when I was in my late 20s, and I joined the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and they sent a gift copy of this book as a thank you for joining the organization. Here's a few things that Ernest Holmes has to say in his introduction to Can We Talk to God? First of all, this is funny. A little conversation with the deity would do us more good than much conversation with each other. Sounds about right. He also says these beautiful words. The heart longs for, the mind comprehends, and the intellect needs such a contact. The influx of divine ideas stimulating the will to a divine purposefulness. And he says, it is fundamental to our belief that there is a presence in the universe with which we may consciously communicate and which will consciously respond to such communication. Consciously respond. So occasionally, as we are moving about in our teaching and practicing understanding more and putting it into application in our daily lives, we come across this idea about our personal connection with the divine, our personal gift of revelation. And what is that? Revelation is just revealing. Last week we talked about discovery. We talked about this idea of embracing this gift of the experience of discovery and not so quickly giving it away to someone else. And we also talked about being aware of that as sort of like a mystical version of the golden rule, maybe saying, I am going to give others their own experience of discovery as I would have them allow me mine. And I didn't think of those words last week, or I would have said them. It is this realization that we have this gift of discovery. And here's what happens. In that, we experience revelation. Things do get uncovered. Things are revealed. Our answers in our moment of need or desire or aspiration, whatever it is, they're there. So we have this idea that perhaps Adam was the first to have communication with God. We have this idea in a book that says Baha'u'llah was the most recent in 1863. Then you pick up this book and you find out that they're still doing it in the Church of Latter-day Saints and in the Catholic Church, having new revelations and making new decisions. And we realize in this group and in all that we have experienced and everything else that we've read, that this is going on all the time. There are lots more people having revelations, each and every one of us. And here is the invitation. I believe that A, relying solely on what has already been revealed, and B, relying solely on what has come through other people are two big barriers to our own spiritual evolution. So what if, here's the invitation, what if we were to A, give up leaning solely on what has already been revealed, and B, give up relying solely on what other people have revealed. Now, the Baha'i faith is a perfect example, as is our own philosophy of studying and appreciating and getting the gifts out of every discovery that has come before. And yet, if we don't add our own to it, Ernest Holmes says, if we're not open at the top, then what happens is we cut ourselves off from what is yet to be known, yet to be discovered, yet to be experienced. So I'm wondering if we can embrace this time in our own spiritual evolution, if we can embrace this time in our unfoldment as humanity and honor the new revelations that come through each and every one of us to help us find our way home. That's what I'm inviting us to consider today. So what we're going to do right now is take a moment to sort of change gears here and complete this part of our program. And then we're going to move into a conversation, because there's not only the philosophy of all of this, there's not only the religious interpretations of all of this, there are also the way of life interpretations of all of this. Like, well, if this is true, what would I do to get into my own conversation with God? What would I do? What am I doing? I know that all of you who spend any time in meditation and contemplation have shared a little or a lot that the life that is revealed to you by doing this is so magnificent, so tailor-made, so perfect, so sweet. Once you've discovered it, you couldn't possibly give it up. So let's close this part of our program with a little bit of gratitude, a little bit of thanksgiving, and then we'll move into our conversation together. So first of all, thank you so much for being here, all of you on Facebook Live, those of you with us on Zoom. And if you would like to really get into the middle of the conversation, wherever you see us on Facebook, or if you go to our website, cslgreenville.com, you can find a way to get in on the Zoom conversation and right into the middle of it with us. So thank you for being here.